Welcome to episode 3 of Designing Designers, a podcast where game designers talk about design and how it works. And today we're going to be focusing on game balance and game health. And we also have a special guest, Monica Fan. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Monica Fan. I am a game designer, mostly focused on system and gameplay design. I've been doing this for 5 years and been in the industry for 8 years. But before that, I was working in films and theaters and have a weird background that before I came to game. And I also come from like a different, like I guess, non-traditional game background because I didn't grow up playing game. My mom always warned me that if I play video game, my life will be ruined, and she was right. Because once I start playing video game, I become a game designer, and that has become everything about my life now. So be careful when you touch video game.
You know what? You say that. I find that like some of the most enjoyable designers to work with are people from like really weird backgrounds who kind of just fell into it. I worked with a guy who was like a philosophy like PhD, and like he was nothing but just the most fun to. And he was a game designer, and it's just one of the most fun guys to work with.
Yeah. I'm from like a sociology criminology. There's actually a lot of people coming from criminology to game design because we got into it thinking we want to change the world and then just realize how depressing it is and how like like because everything you do actually impact people's life, and then you look at game design, it's like I can make people happy, but if I make mistake, I'm not ruining other people's life. This is great.
I also have a bachelor's in sociology, and I also too decided that I'm too jaded to be able to try to change the world in a positive way, and I gave up and decided to make video games. So I guess we're all on the same page here. All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with our teaser question of the day. And that is, do you agree with this statement? And what are your thoughts? We should strive for a perfectly balanced game state. I guess since you're the guest, Monica, go ahead and let us know your thoughts.
Well, first of all, what is a perfectly balanced game state, and what is the goal for your game? I feel if your goal is to make chess a game that people can play as sports, yes, you should strive to be perfectly balanced. I would say most game designer, including me, have never been hired to design a competitive sports. We are mostly get hired to design entertaining products that can sell and create fun. In which case, I don't think one is like I don't think perfectly balanced is the highest goal, and the other thing is from my experience working on designing live service game, no matter how hard you try to be balanced, no like the player base will never acknowledge your game is perfectly balanced. And so I think balance is like striving for perfect balance is, I don't want to say it's like a junior mistake, but it's like the most obvious goal, but it's usually not. I wouldn't say that's like where your day-to-day goal is, not to make sure everything is perfectly balanced, because like again, unless you're making a sport that's people gonna play competitively for decades on end, that's a very different story that I don't have experience with. But in the type of system I design, I would say it's usually you want to create the illusion of balance.
Yeah, I think
That's a good
pretty
answer, yeah.
accurate. Honestly, that it kind of goes right in line with my opinion on things, where it's like, no, I don't think striving for perfect balance is the way to go about making a fun experience for the player. Like the BFG 9000 in Doom, classically wildly unbalanced because it just destroys everything. But it's so fun to use. So it's like the player experience, I think at the end of the day, is what you balance for, and you try to find, I wouldn't say perfection, but as close as you can to making the player feel like what they're playing has distinct choices that they can make, and that they feel like they are powerful and or just happy with the way that things have shaped, and the way that the things they use shape gameplay.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
I find both of your responses to be so risk averse, guys. You guys need to be riskier. So I worked on competitive games, right? Let me. So I've worked on competitive games, but here's the thing: I play characters. I am the character archetype player. Rob knows this, and people who know me know this. Is that I play characters that are designed and intended to remove agency, to negate the capacity for other people to have fun. And what that essentially means is, by design, these characters are not going to be balanced, right? Because given my capacity, if it's a high skill character, if I'm able to engage with a high skill character that is, able to do such a thing, and then I'm really good at the character, then by definition, if I play against somebody that doesn't know what the answer to this high skill character is, I should just be able to remove their agency, and they'll be like, wow, that was not fair. And this was a really big conundrum that I had to deal with when I was at Riot, where I chatted with a designer, August, who was saying, like, is it okay for assassins to not feel fair? And the answer is, yeah. It's actually okay for an assassin to completely negate your capacity to have any fun in the game. And then then you have to just ask yourself, when you die to the assassin, that the outcome of that should be questions that you ask yourself when you die. So when I die 1v1 to Rengar in a bush, and Rengar one-shots me, and I'm an 80 carry, then the question is, why was I 1v1? Why was I there? What position? What are the things that led up to me being in this position? But I think it's also just the question is a little loaded, because there's, as you said, Monica, like, it's like that, like, for the most part, like, these perfectly balanced game states are like, junior pipe dreams, but also, like, I don't know about you guys, but a game that's 50% win rate everywhere and every outcome is 50%, even if it were possible, that doesn't sound fun.
No,
Isn't
it's just take 20 minutes to flip this coin?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that doesn't feel, I mean, the process of that coin flip for 20 minutes can be fun.
Yeah.
But, like, at the end of the day, if it's the same outcome, which is the reason I became, platinum hard stuck back in the day playing League, it just doesn't feel like it's, like it's meaningful. Like it amounted to anything more than just making 20 minutes disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like a lot of time, like, I've been thinking about a lot of the game that came really big in the past, like, couple years, like Balachos, Ball Pit, and even Vampire Survivor. Part of the fun is like, people don't dream about slow, steady win the race. People don't dream about saving every penny until they can afford retirement. People dream about finding that one sheet, and then they can disrupt the balance of the game. And the reason those games are big is because they give you the ability to disrupt the balance. They give you, like, where you feel like you're like cheating the game designer. So I feel like as a player, you inherently are always looking for ways to disrupt the balance to gain the advantage. So for single player game, sometimes you want player to feel like they cheat you, because that's where the fun is. And so, like, if Balacho is perfectly balanced, if Vampire Survivor is perfectly balanced, they wouldn't be that big.
Exactly.
It would just be a game that is, there's no excitement.
And that's such a brilliant response of like what I'm, like, kind of thinking of, right? For, like, Vampire Survivor specifically, and, like, I use Death Must Die as the one that I've been playing personally, right? Like, the same premise of a bullet hell, right? Bullet hell, like, when it comes out of you, right? Yeah, and again, like, I worked with a designer, Joseph G, brilliant, again, another brilliant designer. He essentially framed it as your high moment, your peak moment, when you won the customer over on these products, with bullet hell games, is that moment where you can just stand still and bullshit's coming out of you and everything's getting wiped, right? You've solved the puzzle. You've assembled all 5 pieces of Exodia, right? And then you just start fragging, right? And it's like, I think that a perfectly balanced game state is not conducive to accessing that dopamine that we're trying to get out of a player, that moment, that memorable moment where they're like, wow, that was bullshit. And then they think to themselves, I want to feel that again. So awesome. I love that. That was great. Great teaser question to segue into our first question. And so I guess what I would want to ask all three of you, and Rob, I'll have you start with this first, is have you played a game recently that felt off to you in terms of game balance or game health? And then what about it felt off? What would you do to address it? And you don't have to answer all of those. You can try your best.
Yeah, no, so a game I have sank 50 hours very recently into a game called Gray Zone Warfare. It's one of those tactical milsim games, extraction shooter sort of games, right? So I've done about 50 hours into it. Every weapon feels overpowered. Nothing feels underpowered, and in that way, there's a fine balance in that space. But the thing about the game that really feels unbalanced are the NPCs. The things that like as you're going out to go, the things you kill to get the stuff to extract with, right? There's a problem, and I think that happens in a lot of design. And I don't want to harp too much on Gray Zone Warfare because it's still a game in alpha, right? And the player base talks a lot about this issue, and that is that like getting one shot by an NPC when you have the best possible gear that is even able to get, right? I think any game that allows for like an NPC to headshot you, is it real? Like when you approach this in the sense of this is a milsim, right? This is military simulation, tactical game. Getting headshot happens. It just happens, right? You get headshot, you're down, you're dead, right? It doesn't feel, when it's another player, it feels so much different than when it's an NPC that gets you like that, Like, when it's a player, you go, yeah, I guess that guy just had the right angle on me. I can do XYZ this next time. Like, kind of what you were alluding to earlier, Tamerlane. You learn about the thing you did that puts you in danger for someone to take advantage of, right? But when you're walking along and just get headshot out of nowhere, first shot by like an NPC, and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm dead. And it was from an NPC who has like X-ray vision from around a mountain that I wasn't even able to see, like that sort of situation. I think there's a player experience there where even in like a tactical milsim situation, you want to do something to massage it in the player's favor in that moment. I'm not saying that should you still get like headshot? Yeah, and that should be like really traumatic for the player. But for the player to have no ability to foresee it, like, hey, give me some scope glint off in the distance. Don't make it crazy. Like Battlefield 6 did crazy scope glint stuff that as a sniper player, I did not appreciate very much. But like, hey, if an NPC's got you in their sights, give me some way to counterplay that, right? Or if they hit me, don't take me out immediately, but put me at death's door and let me do this is my scrambling skill at that point, right? Like, what do? Do I hit the deck? Do I try to find cover? Am I sprinting? Am I serpentining? Like, there's a lot of stuff that like as a player I would want. There's so much skill ceiling available when you afford me the opportunity to simply react, right? And when there's no time for reaction, there's no ability for reaction against NPCs, as a player, that experience is just not fun, right? Like,
yeah.
When another player kills me, I'm like, that guy, I'm coming for you. But like, even when I go and kill the NPC who killed me, and I double tap in that situation just to make sure that I send a message, it still doesn't feel nearly as good in that moment. So, I think that what I would do is probably add some degree of giving the player a kind of reaction in those moments to help massage that just like, come on, X-ray vision NPC. Because even if that NPC doesn't have X-ray vision, my interpretation as a player is that I got shysted right there, right? Like I had no control. I couldn't do anything, and I'm dead. Oh, good. X-ray vision NPC. Maybe I just missed what that what that tell was. But as a player, the experience is not fun. Even though and just preface, the game's in alpha, right? Like all these things are like known issues, and so it's hard to complain about a game when it's in alpha like that. Although perhaps it's probably the best time to complain about a game is when they can actually do something to change it. So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? But that I'd say that's my stance.
Cool.
Yeah,
What about you,
I'm
Monica?
noticing this very interesting thing that having played FPS like competitive, like with people who play competitively, is whenever you get killed a lot by player, everyone's first reaction bot. They suddenly do not trust this is another human, which I find fascinating because the thought that maybe the other person just much better, or like they just have like their training elite force is almost never the first thing. A lot of people, their first reaction is, oh, cheating. So I think that's a really interesting reaction when it comes to like FPS game. And yeah.
You know, to piggyback on that a little bit, I played Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov as well. And in that game, they have the same issue, right? But Tarkov very publicly has a cheating problem with it, with that gray zone warfare so far does not have. And it makes me wonder, because that was one of the reasons I stopped playing Tarkov, was like, I'm just getting killed by all these players using these map hacks and all these cheats. They see my skeleton, they see my location, and if I'm not doing the lean in reaction, to show that I'm on the cheating side of things, and I'm just getting gunned down, I'm out of here, right? So it's like that was my end of Tarkov, and so it's like I wonder if it's just like the perception of the game's cheat community is also affecting my opinion in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I have I guess two examples. One is we recently finished a UEFN game jam thing, which a game that is releasing next month called Force versus Brute Force, which we did this PvP was Fortnite character and the Star Wars character. And one thing I immediately realized is the Star Wars toolkit is so much more OP, which makes sense if you think about they're all Jedis, they're all narrative wise it makes sense. But from gameplay wise, why would anyone want to be not Star Wars if one side is so much more OP? So, but the thing about UEFN is we couldn't really change the Star Wars side a lot. So one thing we find really interesting is we gave a bunch of, I think it's called Boogie Bomb, which is this grenade that forces you to dance disco. And we give those to the Fortnite side. So it may not talk about perfect balance. It's definitely not a perfect balance solution, but it creates a lot more silliness, a lot more funness into it. But it also paralyzed the Star Wars character for a couple of seconds because they couldn't do anything except for dance, which gave you perfect opportunity to get in and take down them when they are just uncomfortably dancing. And I love that solution so much because it's not only a way to deal with an original OP issue, because we cannot weaken Star Wars. The reality is you cannot weaken Star Wars because that's what the narrative is. The narrative of Star Wars is they are just Jedi, they are super powerful. And so we just instead of trying to weaken one character or just give the other character a lot of OP, we decide to introduce a third unpredictability into the game, which makes everything just yes, you have all those powerful tools, but doesn't mean you can use it anytime you want. And I think at least again, it's a Fortnite mode, so it's not a super serious game, and I think I really like the solution. The game I love, one of my favorite game franchises is Yakuza, and Yakuza is so good, especially later Yakuza is they have a very simplified currency where money is you can use money to level up. You can use money to money is the solution to everything, just like real life. But the other thing about it is every Yakuza game, once you get into 20 hours, you just have way too much money. You have way more money than you know what to do with it. In that case, I don't think you need to solve the issue. I don't think the lack of balance is impacting the fun of the game. But the good thing about this type of overflow of currency is one is if you do have trouble with combat, it gave you a very good tool to catch up, to level up, to like go above level than your current like state in the game. And but on the other hand, if you don't need those money to level up your combat, you can use it to buy gift to different character in the game. You can make friends. You can use it to do the world building. You can use it to do things that doesn't necessarily contributing to the balance or the advance or the progression of the game, but it's like it makes you like, on one hand it's like everyone loves you, you go to a world, everyone loves you, that feels good. But on the other hand, it's like they give you ways, and if you have too much money, you don't want money, there's always the like casino that is like a couple minutes away. You can just go there, play mahjong, and I have never won any mahjong game in Yakuza. So every time I have too much money, my money just goes instantly. And so like that's a one way to balance currency, is they give you, and also because it's a single player game, they don't really need to like have everything to be like perfectly like. I'm not a big fan of like when enemies scale up with player, which is really common now these days in a lot of game, because I feel like it's taking away the agency. You're taking away the agency. You're taking away like, you basically, the idea is if you are not actually just good, you cannot progress past this point. And people pay for the game. Let them play.
It's like, you know, grinding is a tactic some people can do. Like if you are good at like the micro precision moments, you grind to get experience to make the challenge less difficult. And it, you know, you brought the Yakuza thing. It reminded me so much of Final Fantasy 16, where you could equip like a ring that made all of your hits like perfectly timed, so like you would do crits, right? And the whole thing was, and they start you with this in the game. This isn't like a, oh, you've reached end game, here's your auto crit ring, you know, that sort of. It's like, hey, do you want an experience where you don't have to do this precision-based button mashing?
Oh yeah.
You can equip this ring at the start of the game, and no other ring is going to be better than this ring that you're going to have on, right? But what you're going to be able to do is not have to do this really weird timing game thing, and it handles it for you. And it's like, I remember people cried about it a lot, being like, oh, that really invalidates the experience and makes it unfair. It's a single-player game, and for people who don't want to do that thing, this is a powerful option for them that lets them do that, you know?
I mean, it's no different than like when God of War will have like it's like literally like narrative mode. You know, you're literally like, you play the game for like the book, right? Like and versus like you know, any other difficulty, right? So no, I hear you. I mean, that's
unbalanced, but at the same time, it's like, in a single player game, that's just fun. Like it just gives a player the agency to play the game in the way that they want to.
Yeah.
And I find that to be, you know, a pretty healthy thing to do.
Yeah. It also helps like make player more forgiving, because I was thinking there's a game called Another Crag's Treasure. It's like a crab. It's a very cute soul-like game, which like it has everything I love, but one thing like I have to admit is the game feel is not perfect. There's like times you can slip off edge that can create really frustrating like gameplay experience that makes people want to quit. But they have this function where you can turn on and off called give the crab a gun. And remember, the crab is this big, the gun is this big. And so it just like, you can kill anything one shot, and it's like there's no balance, there's no like, and like, but like sometimes like it helps you. Like I don't feel I would finish the game if I didn't have that, because there's certain level design that is like not great, not like as good as like a lot of AAA game. But because of they have this function, they allow you to bypass certain level. It makes player a lot more forgiving when the level design or like the certain like area is not perfect. So sometimes those things, it's like it basically gives a good grace to the developer from the player.
And it's an opt-in balancer, right? Yeah. It's like you as the player get to decide how you feel about using this thing. And it's like, did I use that ring when I played? No, I didn't. But at the same time, like with that gun, if I get stuck on a boss, because let me tell you what, I played Elden Ring. I played some Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2. There are some bosses in those where it's like, okay, Melania, here we go for number 45. Sometimes I'd like to just pull out a gat and solve my problem. And at the same time, I can understand that, like, as a community built around those games, that when that doesn't exist, being able to beat that character or like go through that area, that's like the badge of honor that you earn. That the community goes, yeah, you earned that. And I think that, like, to just step back even a little bit from this is what kind of community are you trying to foster, right? Like another crab shell. That's, like that's fun. That's not trying to take itself so seriously, as opposed to like an Elden Ring or something like that, which is like, no, this is a serious skill test game because we build the world to take itself seriously,
I have a very spicy take that I feel, how do I say this? Not like boomer, but like older player who like play game from the 90s and like early 2000 are more likely
my back.
they are more likely to see game as like a prestige, a game achievement as a prestige and as a badge of honor or as like an ego proof, versus like I spend a lot of time with like observing teenagers and like Gen Z, Gen Alpha behavior. They are less likely to equal game achievement as, like their real life like accomplishment or like as a proud. To them, it's like game is a place they have fun with friends, and like the identity of gamer is not necessarily tied to what which boss you beat on your own.
Right.
And
yeah,
so
I would agree with that. Yeah. Sorry. I was gonna say I actually I would agree with that because I had a framing that I had when I was talking about my I had a recent topic that I was presenting, and essentially like the framing that I have is that the 2008 era, when games became more freemium and like mobile devices over the course of the next couple of years afterwards were more prominent, people were able to engage in games. I've been calling it the game renaissance, and essentially what it meant is it forced the redefinition of the term gamer, right? Prior to that era, people who played games were generally people who had to devote themselves to be able to have a PC or devote themselves to purchasing a console and engaging with it, rather than them being, wider breadth and oftentimes even wider breadth and wider depth. And as a result, more people play games, the identity is shifted. Now people are like, the concept of tryharding and being good at games and phenomenal at games being the sole identity of the people who played their games, shifted to, I just play games because they're a fun way to pass time, right? So no, that's I think that's a really fair point on your end. Let me quickly address it. I'll be super brief on what game has felt off for me, dude. Okay, so what inspired me for this topic? I was playing Teamfight Tactics, and I was the recent set just came out, set 17. And I wrote a Substack article about it because I was cranky. I was like, this game is balanced right now. There are too many characters, too many team compositions rather, that are all able to be successful. But then the problem I had with it is it didn't matter that these characters all had similar success criteria. I didn't know how to access the success criteria. So the game actually was quite balanced, and things the options to succeed were existed. There was a variety of options to succeed. It's one of the most balanced game states that have existed in the game. But simultaneously, I, as a player who was not like an expert player, I'm like platinum, I think, in the game. I literally looked at it and was like, I don't know how to access the win conditions at all. There weren't avenues. There weren't simplified avenues for me to access it. So normally, in Teamfight Tactics, they have styles of team compositions called verticals, which is essentially when you play the like one trait and you play it all the way up to that, and that'll get you like some semblance of success in the game, and then you can pivot and get better and better as you get into the late game. But the problem that I have with it is that I was sitting there going like, okay, verticals aren't good right now, and then the only success criteria that I have in the game are like I have to use these weird traits that don't really make a lot of sense and don't really communicate to me as to how I'm supposed to be using it. The user experience side of it is like really, really convoluted, but like it's balanced and it felt like it was balanced around elite play is kind of how I would frame it. It's like the best players, it was perfectly balanced for everybody else. People were like, I actually have no idea what's going on. Is the game fun? I don't know. I just copy paste the compositions that I see on stat websites, but because of the fact that so much of the power is invisible power, I have no idea if I'm having fun or not. And I think that was the question that I kind of was like presented with. Is like I was like, okay, we created a perfectly balanced game state. It's not actually perfectly balanced, but close to it. But then we forgot that there are other paradigms that impact player fun, including recognition and comprehension of whether or not you're hitting a success criteria. So like, oh, I took this action and that resulted in me doing well. That was missing, a bit. And then on top of that, like the invisible power stuff, like I really don't like invisible powers. It's similar to like why I don't like the concept of like buffs in World of Warcraft, where it's like, oh, you buffed me by 10%, and I'm like, that means a lot, right? At least there's a ritual. Yeah. At least there's a ritual, and I think that's a really integral part of what World of Warcraft does right, is that like, a paladin will come up and be like, woo, buff, right? And then you feel the buff pop up on you, right? And so you feel like something happened to you. Or when you eat, you sit down and you eat, right? Like people have asked this question quite often in design rounds where they say, why does World of Warcraft make you right click on food and then eat it for 10 seconds until you get the buff versus just right click and get the buff, right? And I mean, it's pretty clear is the concept of the ritual, right? Like the comprehension. You need to make the player feel like they're taking something. There has to be a cost, but it doesn't have to be a cost per se. It just has to feel like there has to be some semblance of cognitive engagement by me as the player to understand that something is happening to me. And I think TFT right now, their problem is in their recent set, like a lot of it is like poor UI elements, like, and UI UX elements rather, like because like it'll be like, oh, you put down 2 traits that triggers the trait, cool. But apparently, if you put a 3rd trait down, it won't change the color of the trait, which is normally how it signifies that the trait's improved. But it'll still mean that there are more. This is a trait called Nova. It essentially means that you can put a 3rd trait down, and even if you put that 3rd component of that trait down, it'll actually affect the board and impact the buff, and so everyone still gets buffed, but it doesn't communicate to you that that's happening. So I was like, I was sitting there going like, I either put 2 down or 5 down. There's no point putting 3 or 4 down, right? And they're like, no, that's not how it works. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to know that? Like, it doesn't communicate it to me. And I would see so many of these compositions online to be like, oh, you put 3 of the traits down. I'm like, well, why would you do that? It doesn't do anything. And they're like, no, the buffs happen no matter what. I'm like, no, nothing tells me that. And then on top of that, these are just invisible power buffs. Like you don't see them happening. Nothing is communicated to you telling you. So that's kind of like, it's like one of those situations where I'm like, okay, the game is balanced. It should be fair, but even though they are fair, it actually just frustrates me because it's balanced and I don't know why it's balanced, which is like such a big miss. I feel like in reality, it just turns out to this is an in-between set. They usually have like a big set, like a big hit set, which was the last set they did, and then they bring in like a placeholder set until they go to the next big set. So it kind of makes sense to me. They probably put like less effort into it, but I was like, oh, come on, guys, this is a little goofy. Like I have no idea what's going on half the time. But anyways, that is my
communication in that way is a really difficult subject matter. I think, especially when you get to games where it's like stacking traits with deep system interaction.
Yeah.
Those are notoriously difficult to communicate what is going to happen to players, because I play a lot of like roguelites and like tower defense games, and all of those games you end up getting this like little pocket of the screen that's like plus 70, plus 75, plus 13, this procs, and it's like at some point it's like, I don't know why this is working, but it's doing its thing. I don't know why the engine works, but it does. And I feel like part of it is the like I think we're all very systems-oriented folks here. We all understand the draw of that depth, right? Like,
Yeah.
how fun it is to like just deep dive into those things and find stuff. But then the difficult part for us developers, I think, is just how do we communicate all of that depth without giving everything away at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Like, because part of that fun is, oh, I could, if I put these three things together, this happens. Oh, and then, like Monica said earlier, that you as a gamer now feel like you've got some. Did the devs plan on this? Did they know that this would happen? And we're over here like, yeah, we just didn't tell you that it was. And well, 90% of the time we're like, yeah, and then the other 10% we're like, yeah, look at, hey, they found the thing,
Oh yeah, we intended
Yeah.
that to happen.
That's totally intentional. But like, it's that same thing where like, how do you tell enough, but don't overshare, and then ruin
Yeah.
the surprise and ruin the people's experience who are just trying to they're just trying to assemble all the Legos together to build something, and then when they find it, they feel like they've reached a mastery level, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that line is so hard to balance on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I agree with that.
as someone who I play a lot of like roguelike and like single player game, and part of the fun to me is when I play a roguelike, first of all, I expect failure up front. I expect if I have played a game where the first round I go to the end and win, and it turns out I wasn't having fun. I was like, why am I even here? So like
I don't
like
belong
to
here.
me, like if the first loop takes more than 2 hours, there's something very wrong with it. And like I judge like IGF every year, so I play like, and last IGF is just all roguelike, so I play like almost 100 roguelike. And one thing I'm noticing is the first loop I expect to be brutally punished. But then like I'm also expecting I don't understand what's going on the screen. But after I die, I learn a little bit. So the next round I go a little bit further, and eventually I'll be like, oh, that star is this thing. Oh, that thing, like that glow, this is what they mean. And eventually you piece everything together. It's almost like a mystery. You're solving, like as a player, I'm solving the puzzle of what is the system of this game. And to me, that's the fun of roguelike. That's why like I don't mind if there's a bunch of like random symbols that doesn't mean anything. That being said, the difference between TFT and roguelike is you are playing against other players who are also learning these things. You have to learn as fast as they are or faster than they are. Otherwise, you are never getting the satisfaction of I'm going further than my last time. And
Yeah.
that's really hard because eventually it become a game where in order to be good at game, you have to spend a lot of time reading outside the game. And then it
Yeah.
becoming like a part-time job.
Yeah. So the question ends
Yeah.
up being ultimately, is a game fun when you have to go onto a third-party resource to be able to access the gameplay to the highest level of potential? Or should you, as the player, should an average, like who do you tailor your game to, right? And this is a competitive game question ultimately, is
Yeah.
that should the average player be able to just play the game and then slowly figure out what they need to do? Or should the average player need to go and consume content online to be able to achieve hidden knowledge, right? This is a big problem that we ran into on League of Legends, right? Like League of Legends is the biggest barrier ultimately. And ultimately, I think League of Legends succeeded, one, because of timing, two, because of the fact that like so many of your friends were playing it, so you would play it and it would compensate for your lack of like inability to understand because all of your friends were playing it. This was their social game, right? And those factors put together allowed them to get away with it. But then 10 years later, you're sitting there going like, is a new player going to pick up League of Legends and play it when there's trillions and trillions of bits of, I mean, it's not this hyperbole, but there's a ton of like hidden knowledge that has to exist. And I think that's my issue ultimately, is I don't like hidden knowledge. I think that there being some type of hidden knowledge, such as an animation cancel, right? Where like if I put these two abilities and I time them correctly, then I'll be able to do it faster. I'm like, wow, that's not fun actually, because it's like either you know or you don't know, right? And that's like when you're confronted in a situation in a game where it's either you know or you don't know. I think that's when you've kind of lost me. And that's where I'm having the issue with this current TFT set is it's either you know or you don't know whether or not how it's going to behave. So if I didn't go online and I didn't look up how this would work, I don't think I would have been able to intuitively succeed at all. And that to me is like a huge failure on the part of like how design balance should be presented.
I'll gently disagree with a slight aspect of that. Because
Right.
I also I'm like 80% in agreement with you.
Yeah, keep in mind I was being subjective.
I know, but like I think the thing is that your experience comes from a place of you feel like you have to go and do that research to outside of the game, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think that like I love games where I'm like I'm playing RimWorld and I'm like, why did this all happen? What's going on? And and I go look up. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that. That didn't make me feel like the game wasn't good as a result. It made it. I think the thing is that if the game forces you to use third-party information, then I think it's not good. I think that's where the conflict comes from, and where people can like lose that like, well, now I have to do this. And when you feel like you have to use a third party, then you're going into like MOBA analytics, and you're like, okay, what did Double Lift do on Ezreal? Okay, all right, I'm just gonna follow this build. And if you stop thinking as the player about like building your own like awareness of the world, that goes away. It's robbed from you at that point, right?
Yeah. You lose creativity to an extent.
Yeah, you lose your creativity, and you lose that learning process, which I think is really fundamental to having a fun game experience, right? Like learning what the colors were in these roguelikes. And so yeah, I think that like if the game doesn't force you at any point to have to use that third party stuff, then I think it's okay. I think it's okay to have like that, to go online and find out more, and to go on YouTube and start watching, creators showing off these weird things. That I think that enhances the fun in some games, if I'm to be honest.
It builds a community. It connects you to it.
Exactly. And so but that being said, when they force you to do it, that's when, and I think with League of Legends and maybe even TFT force you to do it, is more about your compulsion to reach higher ranks than your desire to simply have fun with the product as it's been given to you,
I agree with you. Again, same premise, back to you at 80%, right? The 20% caveat is simply the word hidden knowledge. And that's essentially me just saying, if you mentioned the RimWorld thing, and you're like, oh, this thing happened, and then you Googled it, and then you figured it out, right? That's cool, in my opinion. The problem is, when confronted with hidden knowledge in like TFT, when I was experiencing it, is I actually don't even see that thing is happening. It just simply is happening, right? And then that requires me to have to go and figure out what's going on and that kind of thing. So that like the Nova trait, the Nova trait that I was referencing earlier, it literally like it's invisible. Nothing happens, right? There are no buffs, no lights popping up, nothing like that. It just happens. So everyone's just buffed. There aren't even buff indicators on the characters. Like, when you play on WoW and you right click on somebody and they have like 15 lines of like buffs, that doesn't happen here. I have no idea. I literally don't know what's happening. The only way I can tell is I click on the character and I see the numbers on their like little like percentages go up. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never met a single person in my life that has ever paid attention to that. So like it's like maybe like pro players, sure, but like not like layman players. But again, this goes back to the premise of it's balanced around elite players, right? But yeah, no. I think that so like we'll move from there, and we're gonna go to the next question, because otherwise I know we're gonna get stuck on this one because I have so much more to say on it. But,
dude, systems designers talking about balance.
Yeah,
I know, right? I knew this one. I knew this one was gonna be spicy because I was like, oh man, we have 3 of us, and we're gonna be talking about this. This is gonna be fun. All right, so this one is crazy. What is the worst balance nightmare that you've run into in game development? And nightmare might be an egregious word. You can replace nightmare with anything problematic, but something that you've run into in game development that you've worked on or have observed or whatever. If you don't rag on your friends, when you were confronted with it, how did you address it? If you did. You might not have. So I guess, Monica, yeah, I'll have you go first.
I can't talk about exactly what project it is because
Fine.
legal stuff, but like I have recently, like last year there was this project that the nightmare is not the game itself is imbalanced, is again it's a new project, so like people don't know. And what I realized, it's like an action adventure, and I realized is every time we do playtest, player I'll have they played other game. We don't like we it's not a grandma play test. Like we have played, like they were like, do you like these games? So everyone come from a different game, and they have expectation that this thing is gonna work exactly like this other game I played. The problem is everyone has played different game, and every game has different, like I think there's like the biggest issue is it's like it's a triple A looking hyper like realistic graphics and like dark gloomy sci-fi, which everyone probably already thinking about like 10 titles. So people look at a game, they look at a presentation, they're like, okay, this game is gonna be like this other game I played. Except for this game is not this other game you played. And we had like the very simple issue about like war jump, and people have so many different expectations based on if you play Titanfall, if you play like Mirror's Edge, if you play like all kinds of like games with parkour mechanics, and everyone just be like, I'm supposed to be able to do this and do this and do that. Oh, I'm supposed to be on a wall for 5 seconds, and I'm supposed, like everyone has different stuff. And I think like looking back, the biggest issue is our core identity of the game wasn't clear. So player come with, and this has happened multiple times as a gameplay designer in a lot of project, is we constantly dealing with, especially when I was working in VR, is like we had people who play like triple A flat game, and they come here, they're like, I expect to behave exactly what I imagined, but the thing is like you are using your actual arm and your arm is not that fast. So I think we end up like try to solve it by aggressive tutorialization, which in hindsight, I don't think it's a good solution. But the reality is, I think this is like, I'm curious about like you guys' experience, because as system designer, we are, every player, every game you're making on, you're dealing with players who come from other system, and they have expectation. They have, to them, it's like, oh, this is not balanced because this other game, which they think is better balanced, doesn't do the same thing as our game does.
Yeah.
So
Rob,
how
I
do
have,
you, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Rob, yeah, I don't want to tackle this one first because there are a couple of different like layers to this. So obviously, we're talking about a game that's in development and pretty early on. And as the first things first is, determining whether or not like people even understand the design goals of the game, right? Like, and then making sure the feedback aligns with the design goals. This is a big thing that I run into when I talk to Rob. And I've had it in my entire career where I say that, like, I usually tell people, I don't want feedback on this. I literally say, like, I tell them, like, this is what I'm testing. This is what I'm looking for. And I give them, like, I give them the spiel, right? This is the spiel. This is what I need. Because ultimately, it turns into your personal. This is subjective to the game, the product, the team, everybody, right? But my perspective and how I've been trained as a designer growing up, is my early 20s, I would have people say this. You adamantly say this is my design goal, right? And then the feedback you receive should contest the design goal. If the feedback that you receive is not contesting the design goal, cool, you take it, and you'll like respectfully be like, okay, cool. And then depending on who you are as a person, I mean, me personally, I take it and I put it in the back of my head, and maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But a lot of designers that I've seen literally go, all right, trash, right? Because it's like that's not what they're looking for, right? Because that's not the state of, I remember, when we were testing early iterations of content in League of Legends, like when we were like testing like champion design, and it's like brand new, like you don't want balanced feedback, right? Because like it's like, dude, I don't even know if this character's like fun yet, right? Yeah. Yeah. Like, and like someone's like, yeah, but it's just over 2. It's like, thanks,
Make
dude.
it do 10 less damage. Homie,
like,
I'm not even caring about damage.
But dude, like, yeah, like there were times where like the damage would literally one-shot you instantaneously, and they're like, that's not balanced. It was like, yeah, well, I don't care, but just tell me like whether or not like feeling-wise what it did like in that experience, and what did it make you feel, right? And it's like this becomes a challenge on the design part, which is this is in my opinion is one of the hardest things to do as a designer, is having the cognition of identifying the best way to get what you need out of your players, with the understanding that no matter how skilled and smart and intelligent the people that you're working with are, they oftentimes are going to tell you what they want to tell you, unless you give them parameters that they're supposed to stay in, lanes that they need to stay in. And if they fall out of the lane with your feedback, I mean, like with your like, I just threw my ring. If they and they are you serious?
The camera looking down.
Oh my god. Okay. What the heck? Oh my god, the AI, dude, that's crazy. But like, if you allow people to engage in and give you feedback on stuff external to your lane, and you just allow them to do that, you're oftentimes just wasting minutes, right? And potentially wasting design time. But that's like part. I mean, I know I spent quite a bit of time on that answer, but like, it's like that's only part one of it, right? Part two of it is simply just being like, sometimes it's just like a matter of like, dude, like, I hear you, but this is the game I'm making, and the game that I'm making is this, and it's not that, right? So it's like, if you're making a game and you're saying that this game is going to be like a hardcore violent game, and someone is like, I don't like that I'm able to kill everything, and you're just like okay, right? Like, and then they'll be like, but like then the best thing that you do in that scenario is you take that feedback into account, and then you just simply like, you do a risk analysis, right? Like, oh, like a lot of these people all pointed out this, and then you basically talk to your creative lead, whether that be you, whether that be somebody else, and you just say like, like, we got, I don't know, 3 Sigma confidence that every player was mad that they couldn't do X, and then the creative director says, that's fine, accepted cost, and then you sit down and say, okay, that might have a measured risk on these players. Like, well, our game is niche anyways. Our demographic is that we're looking to try to like appeal to this audience, and we're not appealing to that audience, so it doesn't matter to us. And then once you've gotten that on board, then it's a separate story. Now, alternatively, they hear that and they say, okay, literally every player said they hated this. Maybe that's worth exploring, right? I don't know. It's a little challenging, but like ultimately, sometimes it's like, when you make a game, you're expressing an art form. And Picasso didn't paint for other people, right?
Yeah, I think a lot has to do, which like now, like having learned all this, is it's very important for game to have a very clear creative vision. And it's very important to have a director that's willing to stand by that vision. And because the difficulty we're dealing with is the directors looking at user feedback and be like, that's not good, fix it. And so like, it's like a lot of different swing, but like,
it's a hard part.
Had the game has a very core vision and we know exactly the type of experience we're trying to get, I don't think it would has as many like challenge.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. To bring up my own sort of like that issue that happened, was working on Guild Wars 2. We were getting ready to launch Guild Wars 2, and I remember a lot of the feedback we were getting. And this was during, I don't remember if you young folk were there for the all the WoW clones that were happening around.
Yeah, true. I played Rift.
Yeah, and so it's like there was a lot of these WoW clones come out where all of them were built for the same in the same structural way. You park your character somewhere, and then you roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, alt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Control shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, and the whole goal was like your character stands in one place, and you press the skill buttons at the right time, avoid the red circles underneath you, sort of thing, right? And so when we were working on Guild Wars 2, I remember us getting feedback like, this game doesn't play. The feedback was like, you're asking me to move too much. Like, we would get feedback because Guild Wars 2 doesn't have the stand in place and do stuff. You could be the
channeling?
Yeah, you could be channeling and concentrating and moving your character at the same time. We gave you dodge rolls that gave you iframes even.
Didn't World of Warcraft end up mimicking that eventually? Because like I know like we had like Resto Shamans had like the Spirit Walker's Grace, I think is what it was called. I was a Resto Shaman. I was really good, guys, by the way. I'm a healer. I love healing. Spirit Walker, and like I remember you press the button, it would let me cast for like 15 seconds or something, moving.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Well, it was like the feedback we kept getting was, this game is not like this other game, and in the age of everyone's trying to make the WoW killer, and they do that by making WoW clones, like mechanically WoW clones. Like we said, basically, well, I say we, but the people above me had the creative vision to say, no, we're not making a stand in place, roll your keys in the right sequence game. We're making a game about high mobility. And yeah, there's still red circles on the ground. It's still familiar enough, but we're not making that game. I think that decision and that creative vision is what's allowed Guild Wars 2 to persist as long as it has. It saw a world where, and got feedback that's like, this is not the same. And it was like,
so it's an illusion of a balanced nightmare. Your players were like, this is a nightmare. But from my perspective, it sounds like you actually unlock agency, because there's so much restriction in gameplay if you can only channel in place, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it also...
Right, it's easy to understand the rules, too, right? Yeah. And the situation is like, oh, I have to cancel concentrating, and the way I do that is this, right? And that's how you express your proficiency then, or that skill ceiling in that experience. But, like, when you have total freedom of movement... the game becomes about how you're using your skills in the paradigm of having freedom of movement, instead of how you're using your skills when you're not allowed to move. So it's like the right timing and the right everything else. You're still thinking about those things, but in a whole other layer. And that the feedback we got was very conflicted on that very notion. But I think that the vision of the creative team, the leadership team, and that to hold your ground against, very like publisher level feedback concerns that your game is too different.
You're adding a dimension of difficulty. I find that interesting. This is a big issue that I have.
That reduces accessibility.
Yeah, it does.
And that's scary for a lot of people.
That is very scary, especially because if you're trying to be a WoW killer, but then ultimately the question ends up being like, are you trying to be a WoW killer through being WoW? Or are you trying to be a WoW killer by offering something that people didn't know they wanted? I think that's the issue that I've been having a lot. I mean, I use this word a lot, innovate, right? But I use it, it's obvious, right? We should always innovate, right? But the thing is, so many game devs, so many gaming companies, we do the tried and true formula. I mean, look at the most like games that have sold the most, right? In the last couple of years. I mean, how many of them are sequels, right? Like GTA 4, GTA 5, right? Call of Duty 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, wherever we're at right now, right? Like, they're all just there's no innovation, but then the question then ends up being if you do innovate and you create a new IP or you create a new type of experience, I mean, it's so risky, mainly because dev costs are $1 trillion. But this is an entirely separate conversation. Yeah, I find it, but I do find it very interesting. I like that Guild Wars 2 did that. I thought that it made it a really cool game. Monica, go ahead, sorry.
No, I think it's a very movie approach, because the idea of movie is, you like Home Alone, but you already finished Home Alone, so why don't you watch Home Alone 2? The thing about game, a lot of time like WoW Killer, is so why should I play your game? If I'm already invested in 500 hours in WoW, I already spent the money, because the game doesn't end. So then the question is, why? And I think a lot of be like, we already know there's audience here. If we can get, I heard this a lot, is that if we can get 10% of the audience from this game, we'll make a lot of money. But then the question is, people have loss aversion. Player generally has loss aversion. And every time you start a new game, you are basically going from zero, and you have to regrind whatever you have. So the question is, I think Guild Wars, I'm really glad Guild Wars doesn't become a WoW killer, because why would I want to play Guild Wars then? I could just play the other game I already know I like, I already familiar, I already are good at. And this is the question I think we don't ask enough is, yes, that game has a lot of player base. Yes, people are playing that game, but there's no reason for people to leave that game. So why would you become the killer of that game? What do you have to kill that game? And But
I mean,
like,
ultimately,
if you think about movie, that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, you have to take into account the fact that a lot of the people who are playing these games, especially World of Warcraft, like we do have an aging. They have aging demographics,
Yeah.
right? Like their demographics are moving. They're not appealing. I mean, they are. I'm sure appealing to new customers. I don't have their metrics off the top of my head, but I imagine that not a lot of new 18-year-olds, are like picking up World of Warcraft as the game of choice, right? Maybe they are. Who knows? But my perspective on that is that as you age, you also feel less inclined to want to change your habits. And especially if World of Warcraft is your ritual, why would you change your ritual? So there's you've already lost, right? When you're trying to change. And so the then next rule of thumb is like, how do I appeal to the generations that are more malleable, that are more willing to engage? And that's, I think, a big problem we're running into right now, right, with games, is that like everyone's like, I like TikTok, I like this, and then that kind of thing, and then you're just like, well, that's a free entertainment platform. Why would I, how do I even convince them? That's an entirely different episode. So all the viewers who are watching, I'm probably going to be having an episode on that at some point, because I do think that there's a really huge problem that's going to be imploding on us soon.
It's already
in
happened.
The future of games.
The second screen game.
Yeah, we're already there, but it's like the question is, how
Yeah.
much worse is it going to get? And I think that's a big thing of like I engage in a lot of futurism, and ponder of what the future of games looks like, and I don't know, maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad, who knows.
I do want
but,
to, I think there's a hope is, yes, there's TikTok, yes, there's all those stuff, but video game, especially MMO or multiplayer game, they
Yeah.
bring community. And
I agree.
one thing I love about World of Warcraft is, if you talk, like even Guild War 2, when I talk to people about those games, especially now, nobody ever tell me their build or their like power or their meta. Everyone talk about the community, the story they spend with their friends, and I think that's something very unique about game that
I agree
be
with you.
replaced easily.
But this is something that I ultimately think about, and I'm 30 now. It's been 8 years since I've played World of Warcraft actively. I played it for about 8 years, 8 years ago. So I started in like 2010, basically, and I played it nonstop every single day. I went to in-person guild gatherings, right? I went to BlizzCon and all of that. These things that I actually only got a job in video games because of the World of Warcraft community that I had. Because I ended up going to BlizzCon, meeting people who were my guild mates, who then introduced me to people who were game devs, and then it taught me how to like be able to integrate. I was like 18, 19, 17, whatever I was, like, and that was the way that I built up my networking capacity. And this is what I feel like my nostalgic end feels like. I miss that I don't have the capacity to get that anymore in games, because modern games don't engage with me in that capacity. But simultaneously, I know that even if I were to go back to a game like World of Warcraft or something, like that sense of a community and that sense of vibes and atmosphere are gone. I feel like there's a lost generation, the Zillennials, and the early millennials, who are just sitting there going like, where did it go? Where do I go to get it? I sit here and I have friends, but I don't know where to go to have friends to play games with. I actually only play games by myself because I have no friends to play with. And it's like a very like odd feeling where I'm like, I grew up, I was shaped. I'm who I am through the people, the people that I've engaged with, the people who've built me up, and the foundation of who I am and who I've built myself into being are entirely driven by countless people who I've played video games with growing up. And I'm sitting there going like, now what do I do? I'm an adult and I don't have that community and that network and that built. Now I have to be an adult. I hate this. It's the worst. So I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. But I will say, let's briefly touch on. Well, I guess I'll briefly answer my worst balancing nightmare. I know we're at about 1 hour right now, so we'll go with that. I know it's crazy. The time went by fast. Okay, so
three systems designers in a room.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, no, literally our last guest said the exact same thing. Like, good luck, guys. If you're doing like 3 game designers and you thought it would be less than an hour, and I was like, you're right, my bad. Yeah, but like, actually, I've made some. I think there would be some great shorts out of this podcast. Actually, I'm gonna try doing that. Just to make shorts. Yeah, the worst balancing nightmare that I feel like I ran into. You see, when I say balanced nightmare, like you got like Monica, you brought up like an example of like a game that like was having difficulty in terms of like even like the way that your game was perceived by people who were like looking at it on the design level, and then same thing with you, Rob. Like you kind of like brought up that. In my head, I'm thinking like, okay, like what have I worked on in the game that like this is just like I was like this is some like bullshit. Like what am I doing, right? Like this experience that I'm like playing or the experience that I've worked on is like some bullshit, right? And this goes back to the premise of like, I think what I would reference is I talked about it earlier in the episode is assassins in video games, assassins in a competitive environment that definitionally require you to have an experience that is unfair, right? And so, there was this thing that there was a rework that happened. In fact, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you guys a story. It's hilarious. Is I part of the reason that I wanted to apply to Riot and work there. Well, outside of the fact that I had no future outside of working in League of Legends because I was really good at League of Legends, is that I wanted to work at Riot so I could work on undoing all of the damage that I perceived the game experienced from specifically the Assassin rework. So there was in around like 2016 or 2015, there was like a
that's admirable.
That's such like a laser focus.
Can you? I was like 18. I was 17 or 18, and that change came in, and I was like, this just ruined the game. I love this game. I want to go work on it so I can stop this. And so I was in the interview. It was like I was in the on-site interview. I'm sitting there. I think if I remember correctly, I came in crutches because I dislocated my knee like 2 days prior. So I came in crutches, and the guy's like, "You good? Like you could have rescheduled it." I was like, "No, I'm passionate. I'm driven." I was like, 2 days ago I was in the ER telling the doctor, "Can I make it to my job interview in Riot? I have to fly 3,000 miles." And he was like, "What's wrong with you?" Anyways, I sit there and like it's an on-site interview at Riot, so we have like multiple steps to do it. And the person who sits across from me, I love this man, but he's scary as heck. But I love this man, David Capurro. I believe he founded Odyssey Interactive, and he was the live balance game like the lead designer. And I sit down and he's like what's like something you hate and blah blah. And I was like, well, I really dislike the assassin rework. Like Rengar, like he started doing this thing with like he's swimming, like every time he presses Q, he just dashes forward and like just ruined the game for me. And then the other designer who was sitting in the chair with him just starts laughing. And I'm sitting there, oh, why is he laughing? That's weird. And then he's like, yeah. And then like David just looks at me and he's just like, yeah, that was my change list. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, should I just go? Should I just leave? Like the interview over? My bad. Like
sucks.
But then I learned over the next year as I knew him and got to know him and learned that he's not actually intimidating. He just is quiet. Is that he actually liked my answer because he was like, on one hand, like I was willing to like because my answer to that was like, yeah, should I go? And then I like laughed and I said, okay, but no, actually it was terrible. Like let me explain to you why. And then he agreed with me, right? And this is the thing. This is a trait that designers like. I feel like, Monica, you and I talked about this. Rob, you know that I know this. Is that like the weakest trait you can have as a designer is when someone confronts you. Like, if your favorite designer in the entire world comes to you and does something that you don't like, the best designer, will do the correct thing and tell them that it's bad if they think that it's bad, and then they'll justify it. Give rationalizations. They won't just tell me it's bad. If you just tell me it's bad, I'll be like, thanks for the feedback. Like I don't care. Yeah, but if you tell me it's bad and you give me like context, like then I'll be like, oh listen. But that's hard. It's so hard. And I think that's what I was told. Like after that interview, I was told what differentiated me from every other people, like a lot of other people who applied for that role, is that when he said I made that, I didn't say, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I said, no, that sucks. Yeah, I agree with you. Let me explain to you why it sucks. And that's like such a difficult trait, right? Like that's a challenging trait.
Confrontational like nature in that's something I think a lot of designers don't really have. There's a lot of not wanting to upset people that you work with to maintain good relationships. Yeah. And I think that inhibits you sometimes from giving like sometimes the feedback you need to hear is that something's just bad. Not that's missing the mark. That's we should maybe try to stretch a little bit this way. It's like sometimes I guess I was forged a different flame.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's just burned in the fire.
Oh my gosh, Rob, that sucked.
Yep.
Rob, that sucked. Here's why, and here's some options for you to do it. And I feel like there's I do think that there's a level of like being polite to people and being
of course.
All that sort of stuff, right? But then I think that there's this sort of like sometimes you really just need to know how bad you did something in order to understand how far you need to push in the other direction. Like when I
Exactly.
did something terrible and someone was like, "Dude, that was not good. That was
Yeah.
awful." It's like, "Oh, I need to go 90% this way." But if someone's like, "Oh, I really wasn't feeling it. I think you're close, but at the same, maybe let's try going like this." I might go, "Okay, I just need to go like 20% this way."
Yeah.
And that entire gulf is now 3 more play tests of maybe
You
just a
lost
little more.
minutes.
Maybe
You
just
hit him
a
with a
little
product
more.
term.
A little
You
bit
just
more,
lost me
right?
$7,000, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but I think you're right, right? Like, it's such an interesting challenge because ultimately, as a designer, like the best designers are the ones that can hear the really difficult feedback, and they don't take it personally. You can take it personally. I think I take it personally sometimes when someone tells me my stuff is like terrible, but
How
like,
don't you?
yeah, right? It's impossible. But like, I don't take it personally on the end of you hurt me. I take it personally as I hurt myself by causing by not doing like not putting in work that was good enough, right? That met my own quality bar. I my philosophy is that and Rob knows this because we work together. Is like I'm frustrated when I'm unable to like put in 110% of my effort into something because everything that I do is 110% of my effort, and then when I'm siloed and like pulled away from being able to do that, like it's a point of frustration for me. But on that note, that story, right? Let me get to
Yeah,
the sorry, go ahead.
no, I just like a lot of time I talk to people like Rob, I like or people who like even like have 30 years industry
Yeah,
experience. I'm really envious because
yeah,
I feel like there's this incompatibility between being a good game designer and corporate culture. And because a lot of
yes,
time I'm in the room, I'm like, as a designer, I feel I should say something. But then last year's performance review, I've been told I talk too much and I'm not easy
yeah,
to work with. And then you were just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say anything. And then you see a lot of designer I look up to and you talk to them about their early experience. You're like, oh, when they joined the industry, there wasn't such like a HR corporate culture, which means you
yeah,
are actually allowed to say the wrong thing in a room while still carry on and learning from the mistake.
yeah,
And I am kind of sad and worried about like designers like my generation and even newer, where you from
yeah,
this like you you it's like your performance like as a junior and mid-level performance, your performance is mostly reviewed based on how pleasant you are to work with and less about your designer instinct and designer skill.
Hmm.
yeah,
And but then like earlier we're talking about is people who raise to the top from that environment just become very undetermined directors who
yeah,
never want to put their foot down, and then the project just going into like different type of limbo because they have conditioned to be nice, to never say anything too extreme, to never conflict with people out open. But
yeah.
it's almost like being a good game designer what makes you a horrible corporate worker.
Well, so I have an entirely
Yeah,
separate like thing on that. But really quickly, like I'm gonna close out my
yeah.
balance nightmare thing. Right? Is on
You're
Sorry.
so
that
right.
right? Like
You're so
yeah,
right.
yeah. But on my balance nightmare thing, like I think like essentially, I came in, and the question that was essentially posited, right, is can an assassin take away your capacity to win the game, right? Like, should I be able to like remove agency and what's allowed, right? And then once we finally, the question was something that we had to like dictate. And like, can you imagine? You're sitting here with a bunch of subject matter expert players. These are we had a playtest team, and I was part of that team, gameplay analysts, and you're basically trying to make a bunch of challenger level, like high level players, or not challenger, probably diamond one to like master to challenger in some cases. You have to convince them that they just experienced bullshit and it's okay. And that's so hard. But then when you reframe the design question, saying the design question is you are supposed to experience bullshit, and they said I did and I didn't like it, and then you can just now as the designer I just say I'm going to ignore the I didn't like it part, right? Because it met my goal. My goal was because sometimes, and that's like a thing that I've tried to like educate folks about when I'm like talking about like design stuff is sometimes you're going to make something, and it's bullshit, but that was your intention, and if that is being met, your next step is determining how it's bullshit. Is it bullshit because of the way that you want it to be bullshit, or is it bullshit for some like unforeseen circumstances? Then you, again, going back to what I said earlier, is that you set up a risk analysis, like determine whether or not you're like this risk is something you're accepting, right? And then you talk to your leadership to, you know, build up your security guys, make sure you don't get fired, that kind of stuff. But like, but Monica, you brought up a really good point. But I think ultimately there's another factor, and this is ultimately what contributes to the most problematic state of game design in general, which is just the factor of like, we need to do what you said essentially of like being able to say the wrong thing and being able to like, you know, get support despite that. But we also need to facilitate a culture that allows people of a variety of different voices to be able to feel empowered to speak. Regardless of that. And so this is ultimately, I mean, part of the point of this podcast is that we're looking to try to find people that come from a variety of different backgrounds, right? You know, variety of different self-identifications and labels and so on and so forth, because we ultimately think, because my perspective is that I think that we don't let game designers talk. And that when we think of like the most famous game designers, we see like a bunch of just like older people, like oftentimes Caucasian in the U.S. I think Kojima is like the one. Like, hey man, you're not old enough yet. Kojima, right? You know.
I'm getting look at that.
Yeah, no, dude, I am too. It's okay. No, it's okay. But like, you know, Kojima is like the exception, right? Or like like the Legend of Zelda dude, and like those people, right? Like they're the exceptions. They don't talk that much. So I guess ultimately it's a matter of like, who are our figureheads in games, who are our representation in games, and who do we aspire to be like, right? And I realized we don't really have this broad spectra of like people who can actually engage in these topics and like talk. And you brought up like the point of like, you know, performance review like didn't go too hot because like brought up in a corporate thing, and I get it. I've been there, Rob. I'm sure you've been there too. We've all been there in our career. Like we all do something, right? And it's like ultimately it's, you know, for one, it's picking and choosing our battle. But then how do we ensure that our peers are feeling adequately supported, right? You know, a thing that I was trained to do growing up, like when I was at Riot and then even in Activision, is that, you know, for example, we would have, I wouldn't say this happened at either of these companies, but it's actually like a thing that happened. I think actually this happened more at UC San Diego when I was in university. You know, we would have a couple of people who in like courses were like a woman or maybe like a quieter person, for example, not necessarily a woman, would try to say something. And then like it wouldn't get acknowledged. And then like the louder person would say something, right? The conventional thing, right? And then it would get acknowledged, right? I mean, the easy solution there is saying, well, like, oh yeah, no, like, you know, that idea that X person said, you know, that was their idea. It was a really great idea. By the way, good job on that idea. And it reinforces them, right? To like make them feel like, oh, like I said something that was important. And it's like you're essentially like, as the people of privilege, whether that be being male, whether that be being white and male, hey Rob, you know, you look to saying elevate. I've been saying the word elevate, but I feel like I don't like that word because it's like condescending, I think maybe, but it's like finding avenues to affirm your peers who are not able to get the same level of guaranteed affirmations due to the fact that just like society does not allow them the capacity to have the same level of affirmations. Is like the way that I've been trying to tackle it, you know, like looking to find avenues in which you say like, oh, that like my friend, you know, would say X, and I want to make sure that they're heard, or you know, and you know, our company, we do a kudos system, which is I think cool because when someone does something cool, we shout them out, right, instantly, right, and it's something that like, you know, I like that because it's a good way to communicate it immediately. We just have to remind ourselves to actually do it, right? That's the hard part. Ultimately, I think everyone would agree with that solution is empower your peers because that's the best way to like support each other. But then the hard part is remembering that we should do that, right? Because like we have our own stuff to deal with oftentimes.
And I think it's on a good lead at that point, like a good lead designer, a good lead art, or anybody in leadership position. You know, to unfortunately, you could when you're in a brainstorm, you're trying to solve things. It's always easy for the quiet one or the new person. You know, I talk a lot about design in design brainstorms because I can bring up like, hey, in this game they did it this way. In my experience, I've done it this way. here's how we can integrate these things. Like, because my brain works, to put all those things together, and I just talk that through, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's on a good lead to be like, hey, you, not Robert, not the person with a bunch of experience who already knows how to solve this problem. You, other person who is quiet sitting in the corner, what are your thoughts about this, right? I think that to a degree, a lead has to kind of step in to do some of that elevating. And yeah, it's not the cleanest word.
I was gonna say it's a little challenging, don't you think? What if what if they? I'm someone who can't think off the top. I mean, I can think off the top of my head, but I'll be honest, it's tangential and rambling, right?
That's the point, right? Like, no one's supposed to have like. I think the answer, because a bunch of years informed that answer. It might not be the best answer, but what it can be, and I always bring this up, is that every person can have the springboard to the idea that works. Even if new person doesn't say the exact sequence of words that solve a problem or create the best gameplay experience, if they can act as a springboard for other people to go, oh, but what about? Oh, but what about this, right? Like, then that original bit of design that came from that person who may not have the answer or may not know that answer becomes woven into the end thing, and then that person gets the opportunity to feel within themselves that they've contributed in a way that wasn't just, all right, let the old head speak, right? Like let the old person who knows what their solution is just express what that is, and we'll all get our marching orders and move on. So I think that level of inclusion and being willing to, even say, I'll do this a lot, say an idea that's not the best idea, but it's probably a start in the right direction. And then what does that inspire or unlock in other people's minds? And then when you bring when you're in a brainstorm and everyone is contributing, and okay, Rob, stop talking. What do you feel about this? Monica, what's your thoughts on that? What can we do differently? Like, that thing that I said could inform some other aspect that brings a whole different idea around. And that is honestly the thing I love most about brainstorms. I don't like when my solution's the best solution. I like when I
hate that.
Oh, bro.
It's so annoying. If I'm the smartest person in a room, we've lost.
I hate it.
You're in the wrong room.
I don't want to believe
No, that's why. Well, exactly, right?
Yeah.
No, because transparently, I genuinely think that, like, okay, I have this thing where, I've been raised up, not in games, but rather just in life, as to thinking that I'm smart. My parents made me, oh, you're so smart, blah, blah, that kind of thing. But that actually had the adverse effect on me. I think I'm dumb. And so when I come into a room and people are like, you are so smart, I'm just like, uh-oh. I was like, if you're not challenging me, we've lost. Because then in how Rob can attest, I've solved this problem by just saying rage bait solutions. Like, I'll say something that I know is absolutely stupid.
No comment.
I will. We never take them. Nobody takes them seriously. It just makes everybody laugh, right? But I'll just say it anyways. And I say that not because I'm trying to be goofy or stupid, but because of that springboard thing that you're essentially saying, Rob. Is I say that because it's intended to get somebody to feel confident enough to challenge me. Because if I come in with my sophisticated solutions and all that, for whatever I'm working on, nobody's gonna say anything, and it's really sad.
Yeah, when you're the subject matter expert, and you say, I think this is the best way to do it, that person sitting off to the side who isn't that subject matter expert, they never get a chance to be a part of the solution. And then of course, when leadership is looking at that person, being like, well, Tamerlane's solving all these problems, and other person over here, they're not really contributing anything. And it's like, I don't think that's Tamerlane's fault, and I don't think it's their fault. I think that's leadership not trying to bring everybody in on a solution and just letting the subject matter expert just do the thing without any pushback. And I feel like
I would also just make sure to be clear that I do not necessarily encourage that the optimal strategy is to rage bait your entire team over and over again.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
You get that once or twice a month, and then you gotta clean it up after that.
Yeah. But Monica, please, go ahead.
I do have to say, just answer this question as bigger is the biggest challenge. And when you talk about your diversity, which I really admire, but I was Oh, you're gonna have a lot of challenge because when I joined, I was 2020, during 2020, I was in like a woman in game program. I think there's only like 3 people left still in the industry by now. And the reality is, yes, philosopher wise, I agree with all of you that you need to be able to talk, you need to have great conversation. And I had so many wonderful conversations with different designers outside work. But I'm also very aware from a sociology background, people are more likely to thrive as game designer if they feel they are safe in a room. Their job is not, they don't feel like their job is at risk if they say the wrong thing, or they just independently wealthy enough they don't need that job to pay the bill. Because right now we're dealing with people are afraid.
True.
Because I have heard this thing from so many designer like recently in our company is I will do anything to pay the bill, because people are so scared about their own work safety. And unfortunately that doesn't make you a good designer. But I think that's like a big thing for marginalized people in the industry is there's constantly this fear that you don't belong here, and if you say anything wrong you're gonna get kicked out. And
Yeah.
I have feel that many times, and I have been kicked out in many spaces. I'm autistic, so I'm sometimes
Me
even
too.
like subconsciously I know I shouldn't say the thing, the word just come out, and then disaster happened. But I totally understand when my peer decide to leave the industry, decide to leave the discipline, because it's a very scary environment. And the reality is and it kind of goes back to like the greater design is personally, I think game design, game as an entertainment art form is very personalized. The best art, the best game, like even like 10 out of 10 game, there's people who love it very much. There's people who just don't feel anything. And that's just the nature of entertainment. But part of the like stock market and the corporate structure is you always need to make more money than last year. So you're always striving trying to design game that appeal to everyone. And I just don't think that's possible, because everyone has different background, everyone have different nature. Like I'm originally grew up in China and I live in America, and I'm very aware is like you cannot make a game that people in China and America love equally, because
True.
people just value different things. And they, there's so many humans. What I love about human and is we are different. There's a
Yes.
huge variety, and everyone has different personality. And this is what I like about game design is I met so many wonderful game designers who everyone's just different. And when I go to GDC, when I talk to game designer outside work, I just like everyone has their own like special interests. Everyone has like their own like personality, what they love, what they hate. They love a lot, they hate a lot. But then you go to work, you're like, why suddenly everyone in the room lost their personality? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's the environment. But this is bigger than a manager can fix. This is an environment where
Yeah.
the leadership, you need to create a safe space. You need to create a space where the designer feel like they can say things and it wouldn't, like the consequence wouldn't come 8 months later in your annual personal performance review.
Yeah, I think that's an
And-
incredibly good point. Like you're making a really good point here, and I think honestly, this is another reason why I wanted to do the podcast. Is I recognize that there's Rob and I, we have one-on-ones, right? And we just talk. We're working and we're talking. It's essentially right. And as we're having our one-on-ones, I'm just sitting there going like, this could just literally. Why doesn't this happen? Why don't we have an avenue where we could have anybody just be here talking shop? Because what makes a great designer? And now I'm inspired by another episode. Like what makes a great designer? Ultimately, what makes a great designer is the capacity to be able to express yourself and communicate and articulate that, whatever that might be, and be able to identify best ways to do it. And we're shaped by the environments that are in. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, we are at about 90 minutes, guys. I will. Okay, I will go ahead and call it quits here. Once again, everybody who is watching, thank you so much for watching episode 3 of Designing Designers. We're going to call it. We'll go ahead and see you next week, next 2 weeks from now, actually. And once again, thank you so much for being our guest, Monica. It was super lovely to have you here. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and head out, everybody. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.